Trump administration's aggressive push to implement mass layoffs, federalnewsnetwork.com/government shutdown/2025, White House Budget Office tells agencies to draft mass firing plans ahead of potential shutdown during a government shutdown has ignited fierce debate over its feasibility and legality. A White House memo issued Wednesday night instructed federal agencies to prepare for potential workforce cuts if funding lapses early next week, prompting urgent questions about whether agencies can even draft such plans in the days before a shutdown. Yet, the complexity of the reduction in force (RIF) process, often taking months or longer, https://White House Budget Office tells agencies to prepare for potential workforce cuts if funding lapses early next week. federalnewsnetwork.com/workforce/2025/02/RIF are a complicated, time-consuming process for agencies, experts say, has left many skeptical about the practicality of scaling back staff in the final hours. The Office of Management and Budget, OMB, recently issued a directive after the Trump administration earlier this year mandated agencies to conduct RIFs and cut employee headcounts, focusing on non-statutory functions. Over the past few months, agencies have already scaled back their workforces, with an estimated 200,000 federal workers resigning this year alone. Officials predict a 300,000 employee reduction by year-end, but some, like the IRS and the General Services Administration, have reversed these cuts after realizing they were too drastic. Now, OMB is directing agencies to consider even more RIFs, particularly for employees in programs facing funding lapses next week or those whose missions aren't otherwise supported. The memo also mandates that RIF notices be sent to all affected workers, regardless of their status as accepted or furloughed. If a shutdown is avoided, OMB says agencies aren't required to proceed with additional plans, but still encourages them. Once fiscal year 2026 appropriations are enacted, agencies should revise their RIFs as needed to retain the minimal number of employees necessary to carry out statutory functions, OMB stated. However, Bobby Kogan, a former OMB official under Biden, cast doubt on the legality and practicality of last-minute RIFs during a shutdown. It doesn't seem to me that they would legally justify additional work during a shutdown, and it doesn't seem to me that they'd be able to complete it beforehand, he said. Kogan, currently a senior director at the Center for American Progress, argues that the administration's current approach prioritizes personnel decisions without considering Congress's authorization or the services Americans rely on. Critics, including Democratic lawmakers, label the OMB memo as mafia-style blackmail, accusing the administration of using threats to pressure agencies into cutting staff. Senator Chris Van Hollen, D-Mender, called the memo a threat to American services and benefits, warning that such tactics are both illegal and politically motivated. These threats are not only an attack on essential services, but also likely illegal, Van Hollen said. Rep. James Walkinshaw, DVA, added, "A shutdown gives the administration no additional legal authority to fire or RIF federal employees." The OMB's directive, which outlines unprecedented steps for RIF during a shutdown, leaves room for interpretation. While some administrations have interpreted legal exceptions more broadly, example, public services continuing during a shutdown, others argue that preparing for layoffs is unnecessary for protecting life or property. You can't really say that preparing to fire people is necessary for safeguarding against imminent threats, Kogan emphasized. As the process unfolds, experts warn that agencies may struggle to balance efficiency with the need to uphold statutory responsibilities. Agencies would presumably have lists of employees they think could be subject to a future RIF, said Jenny Mattingly, Vice President of Government Affairs at the Partnership for Public Service. Unfortunately, this continues the administration's trend of making personnel decisions at a speed that neglects the work Congress has authorized and the services Americans depend on. In response to the new OMB guidance, Democratic lawmakers argue the Trump administration lacks legal grounds to direct further RIFs during a shutdown. Their critique highlights the tension between executive action and legislative oversight, raising questions about the role of the OMB in shaping federal policy. Whether the shutdown will ultimately lead to layoffs or a different outcome remains unclear, but the debate over the feasibility and ethics of RIFs during a crisis is far from over.